This episode of the Fight Within podcast is presented to you by Meguiar's. For over 115 years, Meguiar's has been carefully creating and producing advanced formulas with cutting-edge chemistry to deliver a show car perfect appearance. Whether you're showing on the fairway, finalizing your car for auction, or simply getting your beloved car ready for a weekend drive, Meguiar's is ready to help with their premium car care products to make every automotive surface look its absolute best. Meguiar's, reflect your passion. Make sure to visit them at meguiars.com.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Fight Within podcast. Today's guest is Steve Martin. He is a serial entrepreneur and someone that I've always been able to turn to if I have a question about business or just need someone to talk to. So I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. It's really funny. We were talking off air, and everyone now knows that Ben owns Hidden House Coffee.
Right.
You own, and we'll get into it more, you own a lot of different, you have your hands on a lot of different things, but lately you've been going into the restaurant brewery business. And you guys have known of each other, but have never met or know each other until literally 30 minutes ago.
Which is, I think, hilarious.
Yeah, 6 degrees of what, Kevin Bacon?
Yeah.
Somehow, right?
So I mean, it's interesting. You know, I love it. I love how small of a world it is, and both Christian men, you know, and both business owners and making an impact in our community. So it's awesome. But I want to get to the root of why a business owner? Why an entrepreneur? Did you grow up a certain way that made you want to say, hey, look, I want to be my own boss. I want to own my own business. Like, what motivated you? Where'd you get that drive and that desire to become your own business owner?
I don't know that I always wanted to own my own business, but we have a lineage in my family. So my great-great-grandfather came from Utah in 1901 and started the Pipe Fitters Union, local 250 out of Compton that still runs today. So he was chairman of the board for some odd years. Then my dad's dad was chairman of the board for some odd years of the Pipe Fitter Union, and he started a company called Martin Willardson, which was Martin, my name, and then Willardson, which was one of his best friends and that had come with him. And then they spun off from each other for no particular reason. They just went their own ways.
Sure.
And it was Willardson Mechanical and then Martin Mechanical. And my dad, who had, he had grown up as a football player, baseball player, and him and my uncle football, baseball. He went to Cal State LA, blew out his shoulder after he was actually drafted by the Houston Astros. And he decided to go to Cal State LA to play football. And he was a freshman starting quarterback. First series, blew out his shoulder. So changed everything. He went hardcore into business. He still finished playing and still was able to walk on Cal State LA's baseball team because he was a stud. But he went full-time business, graduated from Cal State LA, took a job in San Jose as working for Allstate Insurance. And so he was kind of progressing his way through Allstate Insurance. And my grandpa, his company was starting to grow. He recruited my uncle, who's actually a little younger than my dad, and then they started to grow even more, and then my grandpa recruited my dad, a year or so later. And so they started to grow this company, Martin Mechanical, which was basically big cooling towers, boilers, and pipe fitting, essentially. And then when my grandpa stepped down from chairman of the board of Local 250, my dad took over. And so my two older brothers worked at Martin Mechanical. It was kind of slated that that's probably where I was going to go, but I didn't like the dynamics of all of the family working together and the two brothers working together. Didn't always work so well.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew I was going to go into construction, and we had it in our blood to be somewhat self-sufficient. And my dad was, you could set your watch. He was out the door at 5:30 every morning, and he worked hard. He worked Saturdays and was just always working and showing us how to work hard. But the crazy thing was, as active as all three boys and a daughter in flags and dance, somehow he showed up at every game.
That's cool.
And still worked his tail off. So he kind of gave us that drive and that work ethic. and then just having stable parents.
Yeah.
When you have stable parents, my parents, they were married for 50 plus years. My mom passed away a year ago, but they were inseparable. And you always have the ability, the blessing I had was the ability to take a risk and know that there was some sort of safety net.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they don't have that. They just got to cut their teeth and make their way. And
Sure.
Gotta just go, yeah.
At least for me, my circumstance, I had really good parents, really good family values, a good example of what hard work in a business looked like, how you treat your employees. And so as I started to grow in construction and all of those things, I worked for some guys that were super smart, just really bad to their people.
Yeah.
Some guys that were good to people, but just not very smart.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of see and start to realize, okay, yes, someday I will have my own thing, and I know how I want to treat people. I know that I want to not be like this guy in this way, but take that from him, and not be like that guy in that way and take that from him. And so, as I started to get a little older, into my 20s, my grandfather, who kind of started it all, the Martin Mechanical, he was a chain smoker, man. I mean, he'd be, back in that day, I'm 47, so back in the day, we'd be sitting in Grandpa's lap, and he'd have a Camel, like wrapped around us, smoking a heater, And so he got throat cancer, emphysema, and he was, pretty much on his deathbed. And I picked up my dad's work ethic, and I was working. And I knew he was on his last days, and so I asked my boss at the time, I said, hey, do you mind if I go and spend the day with my grandpa? Like, I just want to go stay with him. Because he was just a very unique individual. He, was he controlled the radio on a bomber in World War II, and they still have, like, the most successful missions to record in the Air Force now. They have the longest flight in combat. He's got distinguished flying medals, like all this crazy stuff. Just a gritty, old school, that war era type dude. Where we couldn't even talk about buying a Japanese car. Like, it was American made, straight.
Yeah,
and so I wanted to spend time with them. He taught us all how to fish, and he was a special dude. So I'm like, I want to go take the day off. And my boss at the time, he was like, yeah, go for it. Okay. So I went and I sat down with him, and we were just talking about life and how he attacked life, and what he wanted for Martin Mechanical was, he kind of said, I started a company so that my friends and my family, my friends and all of our family would always have a job. That was my legacy to this world. So the dynamics weren't always working out for our family to be together. And that was kind of a regret for him, that not all of his grandkids were working at the company, and that my dad and my uncle were working together. But after they were to retire, there was a good chance that company wasn't going to go on like he wanted. So I promised him that day, I said, Grandpa, I'm going to own a company, and I'm going to make a legacy. And our friends and family will always have a job. Yeah. That was my promise. So I fast forward now to... We're 2008. We have my sister-in-law works there. My nephew worked there. One of my other nephews who passed away a few years ago, he worked there. My brother's best friend works there. If somebody I know is down and out, they work there. Yeah. I bring my kids in, and so that's the why, I guess. It was a promise. It was something that I maybe knew I was going to do someday, and I knew I was going to do a field in construction. I chose general contracting instead of just one specialty. And, praise God that he's treated us with favor. And we started the company on $40,000 credit card debt, basically. Yeah. But again, that safety net, I was able to move in with my mom and dad, newly married. My wife had just started a company, Eden's Garden, because your wife buys stuff from her. And she had just started hers, and I had just started mine. And we were living in my parents' downstairs, and she was running her business out of the garage, and I was running my business out of my truck. And, here we are now. That was 2008 and 2009. I'm happy to say now she has the most respected essential oil company in the business in the United States. They win every year the best loved or most preferred non-multi-level marketing company every year on the big online
That's cool.
poll. And we have grown to be Southern California's
Premier.
number one concrete and masonry company for the builders. We're doing a lot of commercial now. We're picking up some good projects with Driver Special Projects Group and the really tough technical jobs. We have generations there. I mean, my main foreman, we've worked together since the 90s. When I was coming up and cutting my teeth in construction, I was a superintendent for Kaufman and Broad. And my main masonry foreman was the wall foreman for the company that was building my walls when I was at KB in 95.
That's crazy.
And then his son, who was just like a little kid, his son now is one of my main office project managers that handles he's kind of our liaison between keeping project management and the field synergistically together and ironing out. And so that whole thing, it was like sometimes God has a plan and a destiny, and you just kind of got to step into it and know, at the end of the day, all the trials and all the hard things, you know who you work for.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of worked. And then, that's the why. We have, I don't even know, I would say foremen and kids that are on the crew, we probably have 15 or 20.
Wow.
Of different, like,
family
that works together. One of my other main foremen, his son is one of my project managers.
That's cool.
And so that was the why, and then it just organically unfolds.
Being that you had such a supportive parents and stable parents, did they have any sort of apprehension with you going and owning your own business? Because a lot of times people will get into business and their parents maybe don't have that background, or they don't know. For my specific case, I was a young father. I was 18 when I had my son. So the very first thing my immigrant parents told me was go get a job that has benefits and security and insurance. When I got into fighting, why are you doing this? You don't need to do this. Sometimes the people that love you the most don't challenge you or want to push you because they love you and they want to see you do well. And historically, especially for immigrants, you go get a job with benefits and that can take care of your family and a retirement and all this stuff. I've always been stubborn, and I never wanted that. I always wanted to be my own business owner.
Sure.
I always wanted to have my own thing and not rely on people. I hate relying on people, but you need it sometimes. And so were your parents super supportive? Did they give you like a guideline or a map, or did they just say, hey, go out and learn?
I guess that's a tough question. They always wanted me to do better than they did, right? And they always wanted me to be somewhat level-headed, but I was okay in school, but I wasn't good at school. And so I was part of that first generation of almost everybody starting to go to college. Well, I was also part of the last generation where they actually had auto shop and wood shop and metal shop, of which I really excelled in. And so when it came down to it, because my dad was in the pipe fitter trade, they actually sponsored a lot of those programs at my high school so that we could keep them, through the union and all of those things. So when it came time and graduation was coming, and it's like, what am I going to do? And I'm trying to figure out school. And, I had pretty good options from athletics, playing soccer and football and excelling in both, and baseball and just being a good athlete. I had options, but I didn't like school. Honestly, if I was going to school to play sports, right? And so my dad just said, you know what, not everybody has to go to school to be successful. And so I always had that in the back of my mind, but I still did want to play sports because that was an outlet for me.
Sure.
And I think also you learn so much about life in sports wrestling.
Yeah.
Like you're on the mat, it's you and another dude. You're not getting out of it. You can't blame anybody else.
Yeah.
So how hard you worked that week
is going
to reflect right now. And so just through all of that, I think that helped me gain confidence. And my dad he was my biggest ball buster. He knew that I had fire. He knew that I was willing to work. He knew that I would leave myself on that mat, on that baseball field, football field, soccer field. So he believed in the fact that I was willing to suffer to get. And I did. And I proved it to him. I mean, baseball, he would take 5-gallon bucket of balls and he would just crack them at me. Just wham. And if I'd moved, push-ups, I said, get over the ball. If it's just going to hit your chest,
Yeah, you'll be fine.
And he would grind on me and he would yell. And back then the parents didn't have like that. You have to sit down and be quiet.
Yeah. The
like
softness.
They were coaching.
The softness.
They were coaching and being dads. And my dad was an old school dad.
Yeah.
So we get into it. But when it came time for business, no, they never really cautioned me, but kind of mentored me in a good way. Like they supported us. We didn't have any kids. We had 2 dogs that destroyed their house. And they just kind of, the crazy story, I'm just going to go there. So I'll just tell you what's really funny is, so my parents did pretty well. They had a nice house in San Clemente, 3-car garage. And so we moved in with them. And then my wife started her business, Eden's Garden. And they said, here, we'll take the little part of the 1-car garage. You guys can have that. We'll build you some shelves.
Yeah.
Right? And so they hook us up, and we're working out of the garage. And it's old school Amazon. You get an order, you fill it, you ship it. Well, my wife's a genius, and she understands that industry. She grew up in that industry with her mom, who owns plantlife.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they do natural body care. And my wife was pretty intricate in growing that business and learning about all of the sourcing for all the oils. And then what she realized was it was kind of that patchouli hippies of the 60s and 70s. And we were in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And she knew the business. So she kind of just took and brought it into modern time on how she packaged, how she shipped, how she got product to people. And so it was crazy how quickly that company grew. And so the little 1-car garage, it was like we started spilling over into the second part of that 3-car garage. And so my dad has his one thing, like he doesn't buy anything for himself, but he finally went out and bought a Jaguar, like a nice car.
Yeah.
Nice black, beautiful car. So now he could barely open his door when he pulled his car in the garage because we're taking over. Then soon he finally just came to us and said, hey, I'll just start parking in the driveway. He didn't cover his nice car. And so that's the kind of support. There was times where it was like Christmas and crazy, and we're screwing lids on bottles by hand back then. Now it's all automated, right? But back then, my hands are blistered. My dad's hands are blistered. My mom's hands are blistered. They're out there stuffing packages because we had no employees. And so it just, that kind of support, not a lot of people have it. And I know how blessed I am to have that.
How motivating is it, though, to see you pursuing your dream at the same time your wife pursuing her passions and her dream, and did you guys have like a friendly competition with each other, or did you challenge each other, or was it just total like Hallmark movie, you motivate me, I love you, let's get better together?
You know what?
Hallmark movie.
I mean, it's we have a great marriage, and and there's always friendly competition in sales now. Back then, no, she would blow me out of the water, man. It's 2008 and 9, construction was dead, and I'm just trying to keep another job just so that we have money.
Yeah.
And her company's growing, but we have different business minds. I'm a numbers guy. Like I am constantly crunching numbers. I want to quantify every little piece of my company that I can. My wife is a big picture. How does the end user use the product, and how do they want to get the product? And so while she's focused on end brand use, I'm focused on what the numbers, what is this going on? And so we're playing off each other in that respect. And we were newly married, and so we didn't have a ton of competition. And I think probably the beautiful part that gets lost in most of our story was we were very faithful with what God had given us.
Yeah.
And we never for a second forgot who he was and what he was doing. And I think that is probably, if anything gets lost in what drives you, that's the part of the story that if you remember what you're doing and who you're doing it for at the end of the day in the trial and in the victory, it kind of takes the pressure off of everything else for some reason. So we were very peaceful as we grew and as we didn't grow. I mean, because when she first started, we put all our money in. It took several months where it was like one order. Like, man, we got a lot of money to come back. I just put money out over here. But we stayed faithful, and then we got to kind of sit back at times and watch what God was doing. And it's just like, this is crazy.
How did you specifically do that? Because I feel like a lot of people, like the one thing I try to pride myself in with the show is people always say, oh, I worked hard and I was successful. Great. Anyone could work hard.
Yeah.
What did you do to keep God in the forefront? Because it is. I can 100% see how easy it would be to lose sight of your faith when you're working and you're an entrepreneur and you're newly married and you're living at your parents' house. It's there's so many other life things that happen and that go on that it's easy to get sidetracked and say, you know what, I'm not gonna get into my word today. I'm not gonna listen to a sermon. I'm not going to read the verse of the day. Like what did you do? Was there a schedule that you set? Like what'd you do that helped you?
That's another podcast. I'll tell you, that's a long one. But the long and the short of it was, we were very rooted and grounded in meditating and getting into the Word. We had a Bible study that my parents were gracious enough to let us host. We also had a life group outside of Rock Harbor Church. We had really good mentors. We had a lot of people praying for us. As much time as we spent in our business, we spent in sharpening our faith.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, it was easier then, right? We didn't really have a lot of bills.
Yeah.
Yes, we were working a lot, but we also lived with my parents. We had no kids, and we had time to focus on both. And as the companies grew and our family grew, then now it's hard. It's a lot harder to find that quiet time and step away.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in that time, I use the term submitting. Right? A lot of people give up.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference in giving up. When you just give up, that means you've given up. We always felt like it was whenever we had a trial, like with pregnancies and all of that, with just the other podcasts and the family and how it all grew, we just somehow had come to a submission to whatever God's plan was. And it was more out of a study that we were doing in our life group, or our men's study that was a spinoff from our Bible study. We were going through a book called Man, the Dwelling Place of God. And it honed in on the characteristics of God. And the one that stuck with me to this day was his sovereignty. And I always thought, okay, I could write a story. I can try to figure out how I want my life to go, or I can just submit to his will.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be, whether it's us being at church and doing all these things for God and still not having babies, which is what we wanted more than anything, and getting mad and going, God, what more do you want from us to give us the quote unquote desires of our heart? Or we just submit to you and in everything we do, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. And know that we have submitted to your will and what you want for us, and we'll step into that. And that's probably why I think it's been, I don't want to say it was easy, because by no means has it been easy, but it's been palatable, and there's joy in the suffering if you know there's something to come. And to come's not always here, right? It's to come maybe in a life we'll see, but not now. And so somehow we were blessed with that peace and a lot of people that smoke truth and life into us. And then we were able to sit back and say, okay, what's today? And I used to say that in the morning. It's like, okay, what are we going to do today?
Yeah. I think it's cool too, though, is like understanding that, like, yeah, God's sovereignty, but also like I mean, in our human nature, especially like starting a business and like trying to grow a family and stuff like that, it's so quick to play the why me God. Like, look at Joe Schmo over here. He's an awful human and he's blown up, or he's got everything. Yeah. But I think it's one of those things where, like, if we're truly hanging on to like God's word, I mean, it's still going to be hard, but at the end of the day, it's knowing like his plan is not always our plan. And it's so hard to kind of fully understand and believe in that.
Totally.
And I think that's something too in today's like world where it's like, just because things aren't going the way we thought they would go, doesn't mean God's not going to be faithful in a new direction, in a new way. So I just thought that was really cool listening to you say that.
Well, his sovereignty is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because if he allowed the goodness, he's also allowing the struggle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? If he allowed you to become a business owner that's thriving, he could also allow you to lose it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Well, and without struggle, how would we really understand what true joy is? You know,
100%.
like, just like in when going back to business, like failures are meant, in my opinion, and what I've learned over my short little business career is like failures are what get you to greatness, right? Like if you don't fail, I feel like you don't have a lesson to learn from. And
100%.
I mean, you guys starting 2 businesses at once, like most people can never start 1 business and let alone 2.
Right.
Like that's insane.
And be successful.
Yeah. That's,
But I mean, speak on that, because you, the first time you started Legacy, it wasn't just pew.
No. So
You know.
Legacy was actually kind of my second run.
Yeah.
There was Martin Contracting Company, which I called it Martin Contracting, and I hate putting my name on anything, and it's not because I don't want to stand behind it.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many people and things that make a company go.
yeah, it feels
And
weird.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of glad that thing failed in a way because I was too young to know. But yeah, I did a lot of things wrong. You know, I think the last time around with Legacy, I had taken what I had learned from the failure, right, and understood there's certain people you need, and trying to do everything on your own doesn't work. It just doesn't.
Yeah, that's why Manny and I partnered up.
There you
like,
go,
you know?
right? I mean, it's just, many hands make light work.
100%.
But then how do you, I think talking about submission and talking about us as men, being boys in sports, and then you play hockey, you were a Marine, you played sports your whole life, I played sports my whole life. You're taught not to quit. You're taught not to submit because it means you're going to lose. Then you get into our faith and you're taught to submit. In order to get everything that God wants for your life, you have to submit to God. I've always been really curious because every time I'd go to church, I'd hear it. You got to submit to God. You got to submit to God. Like, great. How? Like, what did you do? How did you submit? It's not going to look the same for everybody. How do you submit to God? Do you check yourself? Do you take like a daily inventory? What do you do to make sure that you're humble?
That's a
in
great
spirit?
question. I don't even really know how to answer it other than I think my blessing and my curse, which is really only blessing, God has my ear pretty quick. I'm not really hard-headed in a lot of stuff. There's things I'm super hard-headed in, but there's things I'm not very hard-headed in. And so even when I feel I'm right and my wife and I will get in an argument, it doesn't take very long before if I walk away where he just is like, hey, get a move on and make this right. So I think that I've been very fortunate and lucky that, I am hard-headed in athletes. Like when it comes to, Kenny and I, which is my good friend and my jiu-jitsu professor, he's a 2-stripe black belt, and I don't even think he's ever been choked out.
Dang. How the heck?
I can't tell you how many times I've been put to sleep because my inability to submit.
Yeah, right.
But for some reason, when it comes to God's will, I've always been able to submit. It's just been pretty easy. I don't know why.
I think that's, I mean, that speaks kind of to your character, right? Like, I've never met you. I just met you, right? But like listening to how you're talking and stuff like that, being able to submit to like our Lord is significantly different than just like quitting or giving up,
Yeah.
There's gonna be times where obviously we don't submit to the Lord, right? Like, right. God, like, I think you're telling me this, but you're not, so I'm gonna go this way. And he has a real nice way of making you U-turn
most of the time.
Yeah. So I think it goes back to, again, kind of speaking to your character, and probably more than likely a lot of that attributes to like your upbringing and the support groups that you've had, and it sounds like you and I have very similar like life stories. Like I was very fortunate to grow up with an amazing support system, you know, and not very many people have that. Right. But I think in that I've learned, like I had a father that was pretty, you know, he's from the country, South Dakota, ranching, farming, hunting for his food. Like he grew up at, you know, a wrestler like in South Dakota. He's just a hardworking guy, right? But he taught me those lessons at an early age of you're going to work hard, but at the end of the day, when you're wrong and you need to own up to it and you need to fess up. It doesn't make you less of a man, but you better not freaking quit because you're quitting. Like I think there's like that difference of quitting because you're I don't even know what the right.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
There's you've given up on the situation as being helpless.
Yeah.
But the difference between that of like you just finally said, okay, that's it. I can't do it anymore. But you can't really quit God.
Yeah.
You can try.
Yeah.
You can try, but if he's got a plan for you,
he's gonna find you.
Like you said, he's really good at correcting you. But I think it's the submission side and the giving up is, I don't know somehow in my spirit how I could just deny that I know he's sovereign and that there's a plan. Granted, you know, the last couple years where I've actually I lived a pretty good life, and then losing my nephew and my mom in back-to-back years in fairly tragic ways, it really tests you, because that's the first major tragedy that you have to reconcile in your brain, right? And so that's been a test, and it's been one of those struggles, because at the end of the day, when you are a serial entrepreneur, there's not a lot of time to grieve. Because you do feed a lot of mouths. We have 100+ people at Legacy with big families, mostly Hispanic company. There's a lot of we have our company picnics. There's 500-600 people, and that's a reality. It's a dose of like, okay, there's all these growing families that eat at this table. You don't really have time to grieve, and you don't have time to mope. And on the flip side, then we have, you know, like the Project Social, where Project Social and Hidden House have the synergy. Yeah. There's 30, 40 people there. And, you know, of course, my son works there. And then, you know, with Rad Brat. And so all these different things tie together. And this is the first time I've had to, in a sense, will myself to get moving. Because that weight of how many people are eating off of things that I have my hands on. And for the first time I'm struggling. I've had tragedy to deal with, and I've had to figure out how to get out of bed, how to not let my mind go there. Yeah. You know, and then, and also probably the first time in my life where I had slid, and I could feel it. I felt like it was harder to go because I had lost that really intimate connection, and now I was trying to do more on my own. Yeah. And so, up until then, though, it had been, you know, good parents. You know, if sports were I excelled, I worked hard. I mean, I outworked everybody on my team, hands down. And my dad told me a long time ago, you can lose, but don't get outworked. Yeah. Yeah. You can control how hard you practice. You can control if your team does 20, if you do 25. And so I've always worked harder than everybody, but I couldn't, you know, it was like this was the first time where, one, my mom wasn't around to support me, and I couldn't control any of the feelings that I was having. And so, and I'd kind of slipped a little bit away from God. It was the first time things weren't so easy. Yeah. It just wasn't, and not that it was easy, but it was like, it was different.
But does it make you because you had, I don't know, was a success for such a long time, but maybe because of that work ethic, it garnered you and rewarded you with the success that you had, and then you knew where you were, you know who you are, you know where you are. Not that you're comfortable, but there's a sense of comfort, and then all of a sudden, like that, just back to back, you lose a nephew, you lose your mom. Does it make you question, not God, but does it make you question your intimacy or your relationship? Like, were you at one point like angry with God, or were you questioning like, why the hell would you do this to me?
No, I wasn't. I was never angry with God or questioning God.
Mm-hmm.
I was questioning why I couldn't get myself to find him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a big difference, right? Because I think he's there. He's always there.
Yeah.
But for some reason, there was a disconnect in me that wasn't searching for him. Instead, I was getting myself to do it. I was getting myself to get up, getting myself to put pressure on, and maybe that was just the way I coped to keep moving. Because, at the end of the day, I got 4 kids, 5, technically. I got 4 that live at home, and then 2 grandkids, and I've got all these different businesses and a lot of people, looking, especially with my family. I'm the only Christian in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So when we lost my nephew, it's my older brother's son who worked with me. I saw him every day. That was devastating for me, but my brother is going through everything. And then as being the youngest in the family, but the Christian, that's like, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing? And being taxed with I did my nephew's eulogy. That's something you never want to do.
Yeah.
So I found the strength in God to get through some of that, but then I purposely just wasn't going there. I wasn't reaching out, and I don't know why. I don't know what happened with it, but I think the conditioning of my whole life from athletics was to be able to persevere and go through.
Keep going.
But and I know God carried me in a lot of ways, but one of my phrases that I love is choose this day who you will serve.
Mm-hmm.
And you make a conscious effort every morning on doing that. And I think in this last several years, praise God, I'm back to a very good, healthy place now. But those couple years, that wasn't a conscious decision in the morning, so everything ties back to, I know I've been really blessed. I've been really blessed with the disposition God's created me to have. Yeah. The family that he's given me. I mean, as you get older and you start to look at your friends growing up that you just don't see their family dynamics till you get way removed. And I'm going, man, I had parents that were there for everything. They were team mom and coach and still together and supporting us. And so I understand like how blessed I've been in all of that. And so I think it makes it a little easier. And coping with, even with the grief. I mean, you can cash your paycheck and you're going to make all your bills tomorrow. That's at least you got people out there that are grieving, that are somehow getting to work, and getting to work still isn't paying all the bills.
Yeah. So there was blessing in the darkness still.
There is.
And it's kind of like relating back to, I don't know, this isn't the proper word, but it's tying back to like failure in business, right? Like you fail and you learn. This in your spiritual journey is kind of like not a failure, but it's a stumbling block, a roadblock that sometimes, like God's putting in our path, and we don't know why, we don't understand why. It's really easy to be like, all right, well, I got this then, and it's hard not to go there. But like you just said, you're on a place, or you're now back in a place of being good and great. And maybe it's one of those things where we look back at it and it sucks during, and we still don't have an answer of why. Right. But now we're like, oh, my relationship to you now is a little bit more intimate. It's a little deeper. It's a little, it's kind of weird. Like we almost lost my mom unexpectedly a few years ago, and it was one of those, thank the Lord we didn't, but it was like I remember her going into like the operating room, and I was like, what just happened? Like my dad and I were in Vegas. We were playing in a hockey tournament out there. You get a random phone call, everything's great, and all of a sudden your world's just like, wait, what? And like looking back at it, I'm like, now I was never angry, like you kind of just said, which I thought was really cool. I was never angry. I was just kind of wondering like why, like this is like the sweetest lady on earth. Like take me. I've done a lot of dumb things in my life. Like pick me, let her pick me. But then like now that I'm in a spot where I'm like, okay, I'm thankful I went through it. And I'm praying that like as a father now, I can try to pour that into my family and my kids, to just be like, it's okay to not have the answers. It's okay to kind of step back a little bit once in a while, but always remember, like, he is our, for lack of better terms, like true north, and always going back to it. It's hard, but it's kind of related to like failure in business.
100%.
So
And that was, I think, part of my struggle, and still is my struggle. Not necessarily, but my mom, like her service, like her celebration of life, the layers of childhood to present that was there, to see how many people she had mothered. Like at one point, I mean, one of the biggest blessings was we knew she was dying of cancer. So I mean, it's not the thing I wanted to do ever, but I sat down with my mom and talked about how she wanted her service to go. And so as we're talking about all those things, I asked at the service at one point, I said, if my mom mothered you in any way, please stand up.
that's cool.
And there was probably 300 kids and
Sheesh.
and adults, and it was a big thing. And so to see somebody so, like, they always say you can judge them by their fruit,
Yeah.
like, and not just because it's my mom. I just know very few people with the amount of fruit she had in her life.
That's cool.
And so to see her suffer, like her last few minutes were horrific. And so I think that was part of my stumbling too. And it's not that I needed an answer to why, because I knew that there was a glory, and that whatever she suffered from, she doesn't remember. We do,
Yeah.
right? And I wouldn't change it, but a part of that, there was a visual there that still to this day kind of has me hung up, because I can't get through it for whatever reason. I need to break through that, but I never got mad. I always knew there's a purpose in everything he's doing, and and it's really hard to sit back and see how he grew our family, he grew our businesses, he gives you knowledge, he gives you people, right? I mean, the greatest thing, if you really want to understand being a serial entrepreneur, what the secret is, don't be the smartest in the room.
Amen to that.
Don't be the smartest in the room,
Yeah.
and don't, find the people you can trust,
Yeah.
and find the people that have been there, done that, and get out of your own head and allow them to do what they do well. And I know one of the philosophies I was taught early on in business was know your skill and hire people that have your weakness.
Yeah.
My VP of operations, super organized, tack master, highly detailed. I give him an outline of 10 things, he makes it into 1,000 and launches it.
That's cool. I say surrounding yourself with people that enable you to do what you do
100%.
best.
That's the biggest key to just about all the successes that you could ever hope for.
When did you know that, like, when was it time, or when did you know that you wanted to go invest or go dabble into other businesses? Because you guys do, legacy is concrete and masonry. You guys are extremely successful in that field. Now you're dabbling in I don't know if restaurants or
Restaurants,
brewery
hospitality.
is the right terminology,
Yeah.
but yeah, hospitality. What made you want to go into that?
So with the hospitality side, I've always wanted to own a bar.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the genesis of it was, silly, right? You drink when you're happy, you drink when you're sad. It's a recession-proof business.
True.
Right? But then there's, as you get deeper into faith, there's the underbelly of, I don't want everybody, I just want to be that bar that's the dive bar that overserves everybody and all those things. So you have to reconcile that side of it. But when the brewery side came up, it was something that I knew I had always wanted to be part of. And so we just took that leap. And then as you start to see layers of the brewery and layers of just the hospitality side, and with my ability to crunch numbers and extract numbers and utilize numbers in Legacy and Eden's, I felt like I could bring something to that side of it, where a lot, the really good restaurateurs, they understand their numbers backward and forward, and that's why they are scalable and they do well. And so I knew I wanted to do that side. And then a couple of the brewery guys, we had talked about doing a tap house, and we had talked about some of the successes of the brewery was the fact that we had transcended generations. It was
Yeah.
like you'd walk into the brewery, and I mean, I sat next to a couple that was like 80 years old, and their Wednesday
so
date
cool.
was they'd go in and have a sandwich and a beer every Wednesday.
That's cool.
And then over in the corner, there was some 20-somethings,
Yeah.
all girls, right? And it was really fun to see the dynamics. So we thought, it'd be really cool to expand into a tap house where, one, our love for craft beer, the connections and the relationships we made doing the R&D for the brewery and doing all of that stuff, we're like, man, we could take that, turn it into a tap house, expand on a kitchen concept, because there really wasn't anything like that in Orange County for the
Yeah.
most part, especially South Orange County. That's a fairly affluent community, right? So we decided to go down that road, and we were looking for different locations, and we found the location, and we just started designing the concept. And then both of us having a construction background, we found the place the Project Social's at now.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to touch it. I mean, it was
Why?
half developed.
Uh-huh.
There were open permits.
So yeah, I needed a lot of work.
There was no vision there, man. It was a great shell, but if you're not a major restaurant corporation and you're just a restaurateur, you're looking at that going, there's no way.
But is that motivating for you to say, why, like, I like this challenge. There's so much to accomplish. I know I can do it, and we'll build something special. Like,
Yeah.
do you look at it from that lens?
Yeah, no, we walked in there, we knew. We're like,
Okay.
this, because the one we really wanted, that door was closed.
Yeah.
And then that one opened up. And it was like, oh, wait, hey, this place is sick. We
Yeah.
can do the patio. We could do.
Yeah.
And my head's turning because
Yeah.
I came from builders. Like, I started at KB, then I went into the concrete and masonry side, then went back into the high-end custom housing side to come back to my own GC side. So I was heavily focused on exteriors. So I saw the patio and I went, oh, dude, we could kill it out here. We could pour the concrete, make it look like dirt. We leave the trees in. We do, we're just going. My brain's turning. My partner Joe, he's sitting there turning on, and his head's just turning and burning on what we can do inside. And he's doing interiors as a commercial general contractor. He's building out restaurants all the
Yeah.
time.
So it's like his bread and butter right there.
Yeah. And so we're just looking at this going, oh, yeah, we can do that.
And how long has Project Social been around?
Project Social's a little over a year and 3 or 4 months now.
Okay. And
so,
now you get into...
So Joe and I have a great business relationship. We
Uh-huh.
work really well together. He handles front of house, I handle back of house. I'm a fat kid at heart. I love food. If I didn't work out as hard as I do, I'd be...
You look like me.
I look like Manny. But so he handles front of house, I handle kitchen, and then through the brewery world, we came in contact with Brouhaha Production, Cameron Collins,
Uh-huh.
and then another acquaintance of him and Joe is Dylan Mobley, who's a master brewer, stud brewer, and so Cameron Collins, he does festivals like 30 plus a year all
Yeah.
over the United States, some international. So I think he was doing it in Tacoma, and he landed, and all the crew and everybody's going, oh, we got to go to this hot dog place, blah, 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 blah. And Cam's like, hot dog? What are you guys talking about? And so they go to this hot dog place, and the place is packed. And they're kind of doing the craft beer thing, but nothing like Cam does craft beer festivals.
Yeah.
We have the best tap house in Orange County. So his wheels are turning, and him and Joe are pretty close, and we're buddies. And so Cam's got this mind, like he's just a advertiser and puts concepts together. And so he somehow comes up with Rad Brat, We Are the Worst, WRST. And it's...
I see it on social media all the time. I haven't been yet, but I see it all the time.
Yeah, and there's
Let's
just
go. After
something
Ruka the
genius
bar.
I know.
about that. And so he's like, man, we could do this, and we can make punk shirts, and we can make this, and we could do the Black Flags logo with the...
Yeah.
I mean, he just had it. He built the whole advertising side of it in his mind in 30
That's funny.
minutes.
That's pretty
And
rad.
so, and my wife has a saying that it's cotton candy or bubble gum. And the
Or-
ideas you're supposed to do are the bubble gum because you chew them, they last, they stick around.
Cotton candy.
Cotton candy dissolves, it's gone. It's and then it's
good.
gone, right?
Yeah.
So
Clever.
this was bubble gum for Cam and Joe, and I was honestly a little standoffish at first.
Were you really?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, man, hot dogs. So we're going back and forth. Well, over time, I got sold on the idea, and then part of what Rad Brat was a spinoff on the, with Cameron on the music side and the craft side. He wanted to open a restaurant, which is where Joe and I came in heavily, a brewery, which is where Dylan came in because he's a lights out brewer, world-class brewer.
Where does Ben come in? That's what I'm wondering.
Coffee stout. Hidden Hills Coffee Stout. And then as we expand Project Social, we sell more cold brew.
There we go.
And as we brew, I'll tell you right now, we're going to win a lot of awards brewing.
I don't doubt it. I want to try some.
Some coffee there. So that whole concept of the concert and all of that got shelved because of COVID. And then
that was actually my next question is you being around family your whole life, having community, having support, going into the hospitality industry, wanting to bring people together, and then COVID hits, and like that, you can no longer offer those services. What kind of, just a quick, what kind of lens did you have going into that, and how are you guys now dealing with it?
The lens from the being around a lot of people, having a son that's immune deficient and respiratory challenged.
Yeah.
That I love to be around people, but I've had to step away, wear a mask. Like this is the first time I'm around people without a mask, literally, in a very long time. Even every business I go to, I'm on mask. Half the people aren't wearing masks. They're looking at me. I'm like, this is my life for right now.
Yeah.
We never shut anything down from the business standpoint because we wanted to make sure, one, the PPP came through.
Yeah.
And that was making people, keeping people working, right?
Yeah.
And so we never shut down. And the unique thing with both Joe and I, at least on the PS side, the Project Social side, most restaurateurs, that's how they eat and pay their bills.
Yeah.
Not for Joe and I. So thank God for us. If we would have had to take a salary out of the restaurants, it would have been very, very hard to make that happen.
Yeah. Which is what we're seeing, unfortunately.
Right. And so they're dying on the vine right now.
Yeah.
And so we were fortunate enough to be able to take the hit. We got the PPP. It was eerily like the money they allowed for it was almost exactly what we spent. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we were able to, when we were low, we were able to give the company money because we know in the long run we'll make it back. And then with Rad Brat, we were ready to go. It was actually the health department that kicked us off of that. And so
good old health department.
Yeah, they've made our lives difficult over there. But with Cameron and Dylan still brews for Helmsman, which is in Newport Beach. It's the old Newport Brew Co.
Okay.
And so good beer at Helmsman. Like
I haven't had it yet.
And it's a great place to get good food. Drew, who's their head chef over there, helped us launch Rad Brat and came in and helped us out a lot. And so that's a great place for Helmsman. Bang up place.
We'll go try it out.
And then so that kind of transitioned into Dylan had a place to go, but Cameron did festivals.
Yeah.
So like his business was gone.
Yeah.
Literally gone. He had to cancel everything he had on the books. And when it was March and he had stuff in May and June, it was still hope. We didn't know what was going to happen. But man, his stuff just got shut down. Yeah. So it was like, okay, well, at the very least, as partners, we're all really close, really tight. We don't have that bicker back and forth. We all bring something to the arena, and we are really good about staying in our lane. So we kind of are like, we gotta make this work, at least for Cam for the time being. We know festivals are going to come back, and he's going to crush because he puts on a better festival than anybody out there. But we just we were full steam ahead. We had already spent the money. So if you can make
so you just gotta go
more than what your labor costs every day, which barely we make, but we made it happen. So that's kind of just been the COVID approach.
So back to Mama Martin, pun intended. Do you feel like now you're leaving a legacy because of how she and your father raised you? Now you get to bring people together at work. You have family members working at Legacy Builders. You're bringing people together that you don't even know. So how are you leaving your mother's legacy behind? Is it by the way you treat people? and maybe mentor other people and have an impact in their lives?
Yes. I think yes. One thing my mom did really well was she did not judge anybody, and you got loved.
Yeah.
And so we try to love on people in all of our businesses. My mom's dad, who we called Grandpa Skidmore, they called him Skid. His middle name was Ralston.
Okay.
And so my youngest son's middle name is Ralston.
Yeah.
And my oldest son's middle name is William. So that's a tribute to my dad. And my brother's name is Robert, which is a tribute to my grandpa, my dad's dad. So there's all that tie. But when my mom's mom was the lead engineer for Ford, he was a body engineer for Packard, and he was an engineer at Chevy. And he was one of my heroes. Awesome dude, just like my mom, right?
Yeah.
And so he has a big part of legacy too. And so the way he treated people and the way he told me how to love on family, I feel like all of those examples have been exactly what we've become. And I think we've done a really good job of it. I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I know the employees that we have are a tie to the character of the business. You know, we learned early on, you know, always do what's right for your customer no matter what it costs. Your company only grows if your people grow with you. And so I don't hire from outside if I can avoid it.
Yeah.
We bring people up, as you can see. There's generations now in the company that are successful, making a great living, and we don't like to go outside and hire people, you know. And as we've grown as a team, the people that have grown with us, I mean, my main guy, the first legacy job, I drove to Tujunga every day, 2.5 hour drive there, 2.5 hour drive back to build out. A guy had been paralyzed, and I only had one laborer named Pedro, and Pedro had worked for me at another company when I was a superintendent, and he was available. So he and I drove up in my truck. We met and drove up every day in my truck, and I told him, Pedro, because he worked his butt off, I said, if you stay with me, then you'll grow with me. Pedro's my general superintendent.
Nice.
He runs all of the field, you know, and then, you know, Larry, my VP, we were working together in the 90s.
Yeah.
My director of project management and estimating, we've been working together since 2000. My VP of operation, or VP of estimating, he was the second employee I hired, and we worked together in another company. So
awesome.
I feel like we've been able to become a true legacy. My kids, in hopes they'll go there and learn.
Yeah.
You know, my nephew's already there. My sister-in-law's already there. My brother comes in when he's off, and he works there. And so I do feel what we set out to do, we've done. And I hope that we continue, because that's the biggest thing for me. You know, the company doesn't grow without people with having your back.
100%.
I say that too.
Yeah.
You're nothing without your people.
No, you can't do it all. You can't become a multi-million-dollar company with one person.
Nope.
You can't do it.
And if you do, those are the people that I was saying earlier. Man, why do they get that?
Yeah, and there is a shady underbelly, man. There's times where I've had, you know, different project managers or whatever go, hey, if you can make this go away, there's a pile of cash. It's like, we don't work that way, bud.
Yeah. Well, and that's a testament, again, going back to your character and to see what you've built. Like, that's crazy.
I can't sleep at night with that kind of stuff going on.
No.
What and I know you got to get going here shortly, but what's one piece of advice or something you would, from your experiences, that you would give an entrepreneur that is not that starting out, an entrepreneur that is thinking about, like very much like you did, dabbling into another industry, or
like me?
Yes.
Like what advice would you give to someone like me? Let me get my notepad.
I think it's advice. It would have to be a specific question on what advice, or what are you trying to do. I think at the end of the day, how you treat anyone is how you treat everyone, and that should never change. And when you do get if you're afraid to give back, I had a business coach. I don't even remember his name, but when I was first starting Legacy, or I don't even think Legacy yet, I was just thinking about it.
Yeah.
He basically said, how much do you want to make a year? And he said, give me that number, write it down. And I wrote it down, I handed it to him. He wrote a number back that was $50,000 less. And he slid it across the table. He said, you willing to pay somebody that much if you're making what you're making? And I said, yeah. And then he said, what about the same amount? And I said, yeah. Because I was making what I wanted to make.
Yeah.
And this guy was helping me make that. So are you willing to pay him? Are you willing to give back and go above and beyond giving back? Give back to the community. Have apprenticeship programs for the kids that are coming up, for the younger generation of, hey, my kid's out of school. Can he have a job? Yes, your kid can have a job. What does he want to do? Does he want to be a laborer in the field? Does he want to come in the office and learn how to read plans? Absolutely, we'll do it. So, and just those things, giving back to youth sports, investing in the community. I mean, one thing we really want to be, Project Social, Legacy, Rad Brat, anything we're doing, we want to invest in our community. And so to me, if you're giving, you got to give back. If you don't give back, one, what's the point?
Why? And this is a very selfish question for me, because I've experienced it, and then we'll give you time to promote and all that. But why do you think a lot of successful people are the complete opposite? They don't want to share their secrets. They don't want to give back. Because I've met a lot of, and I'm talking about like wealthy people.
Yeah.
It's almost like they don't want to, it's like they're holding it captive. Like, these are my secrets. This is how I did it. But to me, in my head, I'm saying, well, if you give back, if you share your knowledge, your pie that's this big is only going to get bigger.
Right.
Because now there's other people now, but not only that, you're helping other people.
Rising tide lifts all ships, right? That's the saying. I don't know. I think it's insecurity.
Okay.
When you know who you are and you know what you want to do, I think at that point, I'll tell any concrete and masonry company what we do. I don't think you're going to do it better than us.
Yeah.
I'm very confident in who we have.
Yeah.
I'm very confident in the team we've built. I'm very confident in our ability to get work done. And so, and I tell that to my clients and potential clients, especially when, there's a lot of corners cut and people want to do stuff. And we just say, we don't do business that way. Mm-hmm. And that's why you want us.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the secret, you can give the secret sauce, but I see it with Eden's Garden, right? It's a fairly transparent company. If you want to know what my wife was doing 2 to 3 years ago, look at every other company out there.
Yeah.
Because they're doing exactly what she's doing. But she's one step ahead and she always does it better. So she's still the best. Yeah. No matter what. They can look and try to copy and do all of these things, but there's only one Amazon. How many people have tried it?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I love it.
It's Eden's Garden.
Eden's Garden.
I'm looking it up.
Shout out to Eden's Garden. Where can people find you if they have questions for you or your businesses, social media, websites? Where can people look you guys up?
Radbrat.com.
Mm-hmm.
Rad Brat's Dana Point, right next to Hennessy's in Dana Point. ProjectSocial.us.
Okay.
That's considered Dana Point too, right?
Yeah, it's Dana Point. It's right on the corner of Dana Point, Laguna Niguel.
And San Juan almost. Right? San Juan. It's like that little
Laguna
triangle.
Niguel, yeah, it's not really San Juan. San Juan's up and over.
Up a little.
Up and over Del Avion, which is like a 2-mile road. But yeah, but it's in that triangle. So Project Social, all the infos usually come across all of us either way. So I'd see it. Steve at Rad Brat, Steve at ProjectSocial.us. Facebook, my name is pretty easy to find. Yeah. I hide none of my stuff is private. Yeah. So you can see it. Instagram, Legacy Builders Inc., which started out as a company page, is more of all page now. It's like everything going on. Never hit on the spices, which want to plug the spices, so you gotta have me back. FlavorRepublic.co is small batch, kick-ass, healthy spices, lots of flavor. And
I'm like following all these as he's saying them.
that's where you'll find me, and then bouncing around doing.
I love it, man. Well, Steve, it was awesome for me. Thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Like I said at the beginning of the show, you're one of the guys that I can literally at any time, and I think we were talking about, I think I've known you since about 2014, 2015, and I mean, yeah, from Rain. And last week's episode with Munoz.
Mark, yeah.
Mark's my
And
boy.
so, yeah, man, anytime I have something to ask, some suggestions, I've gone to your office, you've talked to me on the phone, with the podcast, with businesses, with everything. So I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for always making yourself
thank
available.
you.
And it was a great episode. Thank you, man. And remember, guys, that everything was impossible until someone did it. So, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/The Fight Within Podcast. Find us on all audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, anywhere you guys like to listen to it. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for continuing to listen to it and watch it. We can see the growth on our analytics, and just want to thank you guys for supporting us. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Kingdom Nutrition. Make sure you guys go and visit their site over at kingdomnutrition.com and enter promo code MFW10 to get 10% off your next purchase. Kingdom Nutrition carries the best sports supplements on the market. They manufacture and curate their own line of supplements with the highest quality ingredients, including a lean protein, weight gainer protein, pre-workout, BCAAs, and an array of other products. They've recently created the world's first vegan chickpea protein, and it tastes amazing. I'm a big dude. I like food, and I like chocolate. So when they told me it comes in chocolate and vanilla, I got really happy. But if you're a workout enthusiast and you want to change up your diet, change up your protein, go check out their vanilla chickpea protein. It mixes well with anything. It'll blend great with a smoothie. So to get your hands on any of these products, just make sure and go visit kingdomnutrition.com. Remember to enter promo code MFW10 and get 10% off your next purchase. Let's go.